What if the proudest trait you have, your absolute independence, is actually a hidden trauma response? Think about that for a second. You pride yourself on never asking for favors. You handle your own bills, fix your own problems, and carry your own heavy burdens without breathing a word to anyone. When life gets chaotic, your first instinct isn't to look around for a shoulder to lean on. It's to lock yourself in a room, shut off your phone, and map out a survival strategy entirely on your own. You tell yourself that you prefer being alone. You tell yourself that people are too much drama, that relying on someone else is a fast track to being let down, and that the only person you can truly count on is staring back at you in the mirror. But a terrifying public health crisis has just been exposed. Recent 2026 clinical data tracking social isolation across the United States reveals a violent structural shift. Millions of high-achieving, functional adults are actively building invisible walls around themselves. What looked like unparalleled mental strength is actually a state of chronic nervous system distress. Then something unexpected happened. Psychologists realized that your brain didn't choose independence out of a position of power. It chose it out of absolute fear. Neuroscientists call this phenomenon hyperindependence. But beneath the clinical terminology lies a brutal psychological truth. It is a highly defensive survival shield built by a brain that has been quietly trained to treat human vulnerability as a fatal weakness. Over the next 15 minutes, we are going to dismantle the exact neurobiology of why your mind built this shield, explore the destructive social costs of keeping it raised, and map out a definitive, 3-step clinical protocol to safely lower the walls and experience true emotional freedom. If you are exhausted from constantly being the strong one, you cannot afford to turn away from this. To understand how self-reliance can turn into a psychological trap, we have to look closely at the hidden mechanics of your early attachment development. When a human being enters the world, independence does not exist. Survival is entirely transactional. A child cries openly, reaches out instinctively, and relies completely on the immediate response of their caregivers to regulate their nervous system. If a child is hungry, frightened, or lonely, they call out, expecting a safe pair of hands to meet their vulnerability. But here's the twist. For millions of people, those early calls for connection were met with something deeply destabilizing. It wasn't always screaming violence or overt abuse. Often, it was far more subtle. It was an emotionally unavailable parent who was too stressed to listen. It was a caregiver who ignored their tears, a childhood where they were constantly told to stop crying and grow up, or an environment where they were forced to take care of their siblings before they even learned to take care of themselves. Your brain was forced to absorb a harsh, premature lesson about human relationships. When things get truly dangerous, no one is coming to save you. What happened next surprised everyone. The child's primitive nervous system made a radical, top-down executive decision to ensure its own survival. It realized that reaching out for help resulted in the agonizing pain of rejection or neglect. To protect itself from ever feeling that vulnerability again, the brain activated a mechanism known as avoidant attachment. It manually turned down its social-seeking circuits and built an internal rulebook. If I never need anyone, I can never be hurt by anyone. The problem is that you grew up, but your nervous system remains stuck in that defensive foxhole. Every single time you refuse to ask for help, whether it's moving a piece of furniture, managing an overwhelming project at work, or opening up to your partner about your deep anxieties, you aren't executing a conscious choice. Your hyperactive amygdala is actively hijacking your behavior. It treats the act of asking for help as a life-threatening vulnerability, flooding your body with cortisol to force you back into isolated self-reliance. Your pride is a secondary story your mind invents to cover up the underlying panic of trusting another human soul. But the real story hadn't even started. When you force an organic human mind to live inside a high-security bunker for decades, the physical structure of your brain begins to pay a massive biological tax. Recent fMRI neuroimaging studies conducted on hyper-independent individuals have yielded chilling results. When your brain locks itself into a permanent state of absolute self-sufficiency, your body accumulates what clinicians call an extreme allostatic load, the total wear and tear on your nervous system caused by chronic, unmitigated self-regulation. Under normal conditions, when a human being experiences stress, they use social buffering, the simple neurological act of sharing an emotional burden with a trusted person, to immediately lower their heart rate and deactivate their threat response network. A simple hug, a vulnerable conversation, or a shared cry triggers a massive release of oxytocin, which naturally downregulates your cortisol levels. But for the hyper-independent mind, social buffering is completely unavailable. Because your brain registers other people as an implicit threat to your control, You cannot use connection to calm your nervous system. When you experience a catastrophic day, your brain tries to process the entire emotional weight in total isolation. Your receptors are blasted with a permanent stream of stress chemicals, forcing your body to remain in a chronic, low-grade state of fight or flight 24 hours a day. That's where everything changed. To protect your consciousness from short-circuiting under this permanent internal pressure, your dopamine receptors begin to protect themselves by systematically shrinking and downregulating. Your brain enters a state of functional emotional numbing. This is why, despite achieving total financial stability and complete lifestyle control, you feel entirely empty inside. You look at your beautiful apartment, your achievements, and your career, and you feel absolute grayness. You have successfully designed a life where no one can hurt you, but you have also designed a life where nothing can truly touch you. Your shield against loneliness has become an execution chamber for your joy. But the discomfort you avoid through total self-reliance is the exact friction required to build an authentic life. Think of your capacity for human trust like a physical muscle. If you keep your arm locked in a tight, defensive splint for years to protect it from injury, the muscle does not remain strong. It undergoes severe atrophy. The day you finally try to move it, the slightest weight feels completely agonizing. When you live inside the hyper-independent loop, your social navigation pathways completely degrade. Because you never practice the messy, unscripted art of mutual dependence, ordinary human interactions begin to feel intensely threatening. A small disagreement with a friend feels like a sign to cut them off forever. A partner asking you to share your deep thoughts feels like an aggressive invasion of your privacy. So you retreat right back toward the safety of your invisible cage. For a brief moment, the internal anxiety gets quieter. You tell yourself, "See? I'm better off on my own anyway." But it is a catastrophic psychological delusion. Simulated independence can satisfy your ego, but it completely starves your deeper biological need for tribal survival. A screen, a high bank account baseline, and a flawless solo routine cannot carry your casket when you pass away. They cannot sit beside your bed in a silent hospital room at 4 a.m. The human brain operates on the eternal law of neuroplasticity. Just as your nervous system was systematically trained into a defensive freeze response by early isolation, it can be aggressively trained back into a state of safe connection through intentional exposure. You do not need to quit your career or suddenly bare your deepest childhood traumas to random strangers. You simply need to introduce calculated, structured vulnerability back into your routine through a protocol known as the emergence framework. The first phase of the protocol requires you to execute what clinicians call an intimacy audit. Look closely at the relationships, friendships, and communities that currently consume your time. Ask yourself, when something truly important happens, whether it is a devastating failure or a massive victory, who do I actually tell? Who knows what I am struggling with right now? Who has the right to challenge my ego? Who would notice if I disappeared completely for a single week? If most of your emotional life exists in spaces where the other side does not truly know your flaws, that is critical data you cannot afford to ignore. Stop hiding behind the identity of being the strong, reliable friend who fixes everyone else's problems while never showing their own wounds. Entertainment can be enjoyed as entertainment, but do not confuse being useful with being deeply known. The second step is the implementation of the shared friction principle. True human bonds are never forged by looking at a screen together, and they do not grow from two people sitting across from one another announcing that they should become close. They are forged sideways, through the biological friction of shared effort. Join a local run club, a martial arts dojo, a demanding volunteer group, or a physical workshop. When you struggle through a difficult physical task alongside other human beings, your primitive brainstem bypasses your conscious walls. It registers the shared effort, the mutual struggle, and the collective relief of finishing a hard task. It triggers ancient tribal bonding mechanisms that a digital feed or a flawless solo routine can never manufacture on your behalf. Finally, you must practice the rule of microvulnerability. Commit to initiating just one unscripted, spontaneous human interaction every single day that requires you to step out of total control. Ask a trusted coworker for a small piece of advice on a project you could easily solve yourself. Allow a friend to pay for your coffee without immediately calculating how to pay them back. Admit to someone that you are having an incredibly stressful week instead of giving the standard, robotic response of "I'm fine, everything is handled." At first, this intentional friction will feel intensely uncomfortable. Your nervous system will will scream that you are in immediate danger. Good. That awkwardness is not proof that something is wrong. It is simply the physical sensation of an atrophied psychological muscle starting to work again. You do not build real social confidence by waiting until you feel completely safe. You build it through repeated, calculated contact with the very uncertainty you have spent your entire life avoiding. That is the ultimate transformation. Before, your independent shield protected you from the threat of rejection, but it left you entirely isolated in a gray world. After, you understand that some discomfort is the exact doorway to authentic human connection. The modern world will offer you endless ways to avoid vulnerability, minimize friction, and live a life completely untouched by the risk of rejection. Be careful, because a life with zero risk of rejection is a life where your brain quietly forgets how to feel entirely. Turn off the stream sometimes, leave the house, risk the awkward conversation, find the people who possess the capacity to know you back. Because genuine connection is not being a passive viewer of a simulated world, it is being an active participant in a real one. Every video, we expose the hidden psychological traps of the modern digital world that are actively changing your behavior and hijacking your identity. If you want to stay ahead of the loop, protect your cognitive freedom, and master true human psychology, hit that subscribe button right now before you leave. Turn off the noise, put down the phone, and find your real tribe. The digital world wants your attention. Your future needs your focus.